It's said that 70% of Argentina's population support either Boca Juniors or River Plate. As far as league titles go, River Plate has more than any other team in the country, though Boca is just 3 behind them, and the Azul y Oro are one of the most successful teams when we're talking about CONMEBOL trophies. Despite their shared roots that led to each team's inception, just where and how did Boca versus River come to be one of the fiercest derbies in the world? A derby that has now been elevated to the continental stage.
Hey, I'm Adrian and welcome to another edition of Rabona TV's Roots of the Rivalry. We'll get to River and Boca, their histories, the reasons for the animosity between them, and so much more in a sec, but I just wanted to quickly say that if at any point you feel like you're enjoying the content and want more Roots of the Rivalry videos, explainers, player bios, and more, then consider subscribing. Alright, back to it, starting with the history of River Plate. Club Atlético River Plate was founded on May 25, 1901 thanks to 2 Buenos Aires clubs, Santa Rosa and La Rosales, merging together, and they elected Argentinian Leopoldo Bard as their first club president. Many of the founding members were actually children of immigrants coming from places like Genoa in Italy. Now, the area of the city in which the club was founded, La Boca, which translates to the mouth in English, given that this part of the city is right on the river. It's one of the harbor neighborhoods within Buenos Aires, where the Matanza River flows into the much larger Rio de la Plata. So how did they come up with the name River Plate, which, as I'm sure you've noticed, is written in English? Well, as the story goes, some of the members of the club were in the harbor and saw some English dockhands playing a game of football on their lunch break. The boxes that these workers had been working with had the River Plate stamped on them as their shipping destination, which of course is the English translation of Rio de la Plata. And there we have it, that was their name. As we'll see with their rivals, the use of English wording as opposed to Spanish was considered alluring, given that football was, of course, introduced to Argentina by English railroad workers and sailors. As for the color of their kits, River originally wore all white. However, there's a couple of ideas as to how the red stripe came about. One story speaks of one of the members going out during Carnival in Buenos Aires and grabbing a red streamer and then adding that to their kits because they wanted to add a bit of color. Another story points to the aforementioned immigrants who helped found the club being from Genoa, and just many immigrants in La Boca in general being from Genoa. The Genoese flag has the same colors as River Plate, as you can see here. River first entered the Argentine Football Association in 1905 in the 3rd Division, with their first match coming up against Faculty de Medicina. 3 years later, in 1908, they finally made their way to the 1st Division after defeating Racing Club 7-0. See what I mean about English names? Despite being located in La Boca at their inception, River were evicted numerous times for numerous reasons, slowly moving further and further away from La Boca until they finally settled in the area of Belgrano, where their famous El Monumental Stadium is located. Now, all the while that River was getting bounced around Buenos Aires, they were at odds with the other team from La Boca, Boca Juniors. Club Atlético Boca Juniors were founded by, again, mostly children of Italian immigrants from Genoa, who came together on April 3rd, 1905 to found the club some 4 years after their rivals River Plate. The first half of the club name itself is fairly self-explanatory, deriving from the area of La Boca in which the club was formed, while the juniors part, I'm sure you've guessed, yes, they added juniors in English in order to give it a touch of, as their club website says, English prestige. They didn't actually adopt their famous blue and yellow right away, as their first kits were white with black or navy blue vertical stripes sewn together by one of the club members' sister. It was in these kits that Boca played their very first match in their club history on April 21st, 1905, where they won 4-0 against Mariano Moreno. And speaking of their club colors, they adopted the blue and yellow that's now synonymous with the club nowadays in 1907. Why blue and yellow? Well, one of the founding members of Boca named Juan Briquetto worked on a bridge in the harbor of La Boca. On March 23, 1907, a ship named the Drottning Sofia sailed into the harbor, a ship flying the blue and yellow flag of Sweden. Briquetto pitched the idea for the club colors to be blue and yellow to his fellow members, and the rest is history. It took Boca a while to make it to the Primera División, but they finally did it in 1913, winning their first match in the competition 4-1 on April 13, 1913 against Estudiantil Porteño. Thus, with Boca and River in the Primera División, and with animosity between the two clubs growing due to both naturally wanting to be considered the club from La Boca, the first ever Superclásico in which both teams were in the top division was played in Racing Club Stadium, in which River Plate Plate won 2-1 thanks to goals from Candido Garcia and Alberto Penny. However, the two teams had played multiple friendlies prior to that, always friendlies given the difference in their divisions, with the first ever meeting between these two clubs coming on August 2nd, 1908, which Boca won 3-1. Like most, or at least many derbies, the divide between Boca and River fans was initially fueled by a class division. To break it down simplistically, Boca was representative of the poorer working class immigrants from Buenos Aires, while River fans were typically the upper middle class to upper class fans. Some events to illustrate this, well, in 1931 when the Primera División became a professional league, Boca had the honor of winning the first ever professional title in Argentina, while River Plate was 6 points behind them in 4th place. Following this, River invested heavily in their squad, acquiring Carlos Pucel for $10,000 and Bernabé Ferreira for $35,000, a massive transfer for the time. In fact, Ferreira was a world record signing, which led to River Plate being nicknamed Los Millonarios, a nickname that River fans themselves use affectionately. In 1932, River Plate won the league, with their big money signing Ferreira scoring more than half of their 81 league goals. Pushing this even further is the fact that River moved from La Boca, a relatively poor immigrant barrio of Buenos Aires, to the affluent area of Núñez, thus pushing the divide between the two sets of fans even further. But class division isn't necessarily and you'll have to excuse me here, but it isn't necessarily the root of the rivalry. As author Joel Richards wrote in his book Superclásico, Inside the Ultimate Derby, quote, "The rivalry in fact started as a turf war in the port area of La Boca in Buenos Aires. Both were founded by the children of immigrants, both had difficulty finding land in the area for their ground, and both chose to have some English in their name to add some perceived glamour to their club. It started out as a local rivalry, before they grew to battle out who is the biggest club in the country." So, now you know the root of it. Essentially, the battle for dominance between two teams founded in a region of Buenos Aires that was relatively poor at the time. So now, how have the relationships between the two sets of fans developed over the years? Well, Boca fans refer to River fans as galinas, or chickens in English. Why? Well, in 1966, River Plate led Uruguayan club Peñarol 2-0 in the Copa Libertadores final, but ended up losing 4-2. They then had a league match against Banfield, and their opposing fans threw a chicken onto the pitch. Then, in the Superclásico at El Monumental, Boca Juniors won, and an Argentinian newspaper headline read, "This chicken run is closed for lack of eggs," meaning guts. Thus, River Plate were dubbed Las Galinas by opposing fans from then on. For their part, River Plate fans refer to Boca as Los Chanchitos, which means little pigs, or Los Posteros, which means manure collectors. No, it has nothing to do with farming, but with the sometimes putrid smell that emanates from the river close to La Boca. But not everything between these fans is all fun and games. The Superclásico has produced moments of brilliance on the pitch, arguably even more moments of brilliance from the hinchas or supporters in the stands, but while there are some derbies that are like a derby between cousins like we see in Milan, a match between River and Boca often feels like it's on the brink of boiling over into senseless violence from when match day begins at dawn until deep into the evening following the match. And in Argentina, they take the ultras culture to another level. But why are they so passionate here? Well, the South American ultras fan culture, and perhaps the ultras culture in general, seemingly originated in Argentina, with the roots of it dating back as far as the 1920s, where certain impassioned fans would stand during the entirety of the match, sing, wave flags, etc. Normal ultras stuff. Then, in the 1950s, with these ultra groups being dubbed the Barra Brava in the media, or Brave or Fierce Gang in English, it's believed that some groups became associated with the clubs directly, traveling to all of the team's matches, inciting violence in the streets, attacking the team buses, etc. General hooligan behavior. Now, just as an aside, there is some debate as to where the first organized support group cropped up. In Brazil, the first known group dates back apparently as far as 1939. In Europe, the first is believed to be Hajduk Split's Torcida Split, which was formed in October of 1950. In England, they didn't get going with their hooliganism until about the 60s. In Argentina, the roots of the first supporters group is said to date as far back as 1927, with the San Lorenzo supporters group La Barra de la Goma that would beat their rival fans with inner tubes filled with sand. goma meaning rubber. So yes, you could make the argument that Argentina is one of, if not the home of football hooliganism, though I have to say this wasn't my main focus of research during this video, so don't take my word as gospel, but it's an avenue I went down while looking into the division between these two sets of fans. If anyone knows for sure, please comment. So, with Boca and River competing to be the kings of not only Argentinian football, but of Buenos Aires on the pitch, and with Argentinian hooliganism seemingly originating in Buenos Aires, things often turn for the worst in the stands, with fights in the terraces, an all too common affair. There's a long list of insane, sometimes tragic clashes between the two fans, with the most infamous moment being the Puerta 12 tragedy, where during a Superclásico in 1968, 71 fans were killed in a stampede at River Plate's El Monumental Stadium at Gate 12. The cause of the stampede has been disputed, with each side blaming each other, with some blaming the police, etc. But it is far and away the most deadly tragedy in Argentinian football history. To wrap things up, let's look ahead to the historic Superclásico Copa Libertadores Final. As far as continental titles go, Independiente and Boca are the two most successful teams with 18 apiece, while River Plate has 10. So, if Boca manages to defeat River Plate in this historic final, a final that's never happened before, not only will they become the out-and-out most successful South American team as far as continental trophies go, but they will have done it against their rival, something that may not happen again in a long time, given that this is the first ever Superclásico final in Libertadores history. And for River's part, what better satisfaction than to thwart their rivals from officially becoming the most successful team in CONMEBOL competitions, while again winning this historic final that likely won't come around again for a long time. Well, that's all I have to say on this matter. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did and you want more Roots of the Rivalry, then be sure to subscribe. Also, I'll leave a link to more Roots of the Rivalry videos in the comments section. Other than that, thanks for watching. I'm Adrian, and enjoy El Superclásico.